I never knew my father was a liar until the day he died. My name is Maya Caldwell, and 3 weeks ago, I inherited $4 billion, a penthouse in Manhattan, and a secret that could destroy everything I thought I knew about the man who raised me. It started with a letter, not an email, not a text, an actual letter, sealed with red wax, delivered to my apartment in Brooklyn at 2 in the morning by a man in a black suit who disappeared before I could ask his name. The envelope was heavy, expensive paper, the kind my father used for business contracts. But this wasn't business. The handwriting was his, those sharp, angular letters he'd perfected over decades of signing prescriptions, then patents, then billion-dollar deals. Maya, it began, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. And I need you to know, everything you believed about me was carefully constructed. I'm sorry. My hands were shaking. Dad had died 2 weeks earlier. Heart attack in his office at Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, the company he'd built from nothing into one of the largest drug manufacturers in America. The funeral had been massive. Senators showed up. The governor gave a speech. They called him a visionary, a humanitarian who'd made life-saving medications accessible to millions. But this letter was different. There's a safe deposit box at First National Bank in Boston, box 447. Inside, you'll find a key. It opens something I should have destroyed years ago, but couldn't. You'll understand why when you see it. Trust no one at the company, especially not Richard. Richard Voss, my father's business partner for 25 years. The man who'd been like an uncle to me growing up. The man who'd given the eulogy at Dad's funeral. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my apartment floor, reading and rereading those words until sunrise painted my walls gold. Then I called in sick to my job at the publishing house, packed a bag, and booked a train to Boston. Hey, before we go any further into Maya's dangerous investigation, and believe me, the secrets get much darker from here. I need to pause for just a second. If this story has you hooked, if you're feeling that tension building with every revelation Maya uncovers, then please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now. It takes 2 seconds, but it's what keeps this channel alive, and it helps me bring you a new gripping tale every single week. Your support is what fuels these narratives. Thank you so much. Now let's get back to Maya, because she's about to make a decision that will change everything. The train to Boston left Penn Station at 6 a.m. I watched New York disappear through the window, replaced by Connecticut suburbs, then Rhode Island coastline. My father's letter sat in my bag like a bomb. I kept pulling it out, rereading it, trying to find clues I'd missed. First National Bank in Boston, box 447. I'd Googled it on the train. The bank was downtown, near the financial district. Old building. The kind with marble columns and vaults that had been there since the 1800s. My father liked tradition, permanence. By the time I arrived at South Station, rain was starting to fall. I took a cab to the bank, rehearsing what I'd say. I'm Maya Caldwell. My father passed away. I need to access his safe deposit box. Simple, straightforward. Nothing that would raise suspicion. But when I walked through those heavy brass doors, showed my ID, and mentioned my father's name, everything changed. The teller's face went pale. She picked up the phone immediately. "Miss Caldwell is here," she whispered to someone. "Yes, Thomas Caldwell's daughter." Within minutes, the bank manager appeared. The bank manager looked at me like I was a ghost. "Miss Caldwell," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your father was very specific about this box, very specific. He led me through a maze of corridors to the vault. The safe deposit box was small, unassuming. Inside was a single brass key with numbers etched into it. 479216. No note, no explanation, just the key. I turned it over in my hands, feeling its weight. Do you know what this opens? The manager shook his head. Your father never told me, but he came here once a month, every month, for the last 15 years, just to check on that key. Once a month, for 15 years. Whatever this opened, it mattered to him more than anything. I thanked the manager and left. Outside, Boston was alive with afternoon traffic and college students rushing between classes. Normal life. But mine felt like it was tilting sideways. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Maya, we need to talk about the transition. When can you come to the office? The transition, that's what they were calling it. Dad's death. My inheritance. The fact that I now owned 51% of Caldwell Pharmaceuticals and had no idea what to do with it. I texted back, soon, handling some personal things. His response was immediate. Be careful, Maya. Your father had enemies. I stared at those words. Enemies. Dad had never mentioned enemies. He'd talked about competitors, sure. Other pharmaceutical companies fighting for market share. But enemies? I needed answers. And I had a feeling this key was the first step. It took me 3 days to figure out what the numbers meant. I tried everything. Bank accounts, addresses, phone numbers. I even hired a private investigator, a woman named Carmen Rodriguez who specialized in corporate cases. She was sharp, suspicious of everything, and exactly what I needed. These numbers, Carmen said, studying the key in my Airbnb in Cambridge. They're not random. Your father was methodical. Everything he did had a purpose. So what's the purpose here? She pulled out her laptop. Let me try something. I watched as she typed, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She was cross-referencing property records, business registrations, anything connected to my father's name or the company. After an hour, she stopped. Got it. What? It's an address. 479 Riverside Drive, apartment 216, New York City, Upper West Side. My heart hammered. My father owned property in New York? Not officially. The apartment's registered to a shell company, but the shell company traces back to a trust. And that trust... She looked up at me. That trust was established by your father 30 years ago, long before Caldwell Pharmaceuticals went public. 30 years. I wasn't even born yet. Carmen, what was my father hiding? She closed her laptop. That's what we're going to find out. The building on Riverside Drive was old money. Doorman, marble lobby. The kind of place where people didn't ask questions as long as you looked like you belonged. I did. Expensive coat. Designer bag borrowed from my college roommate. Confidence I didn't feel. Carmen stayed in the car, monitoring from her laptop. If anything feels wrong, you get out. Understand? I nodded and walked inside. The doorman barely glanced at me. I took the elevator to the second floor, my pulse racing with each ascending second. Apartment 216 was at the end of a quiet hallway. The key fit perfectly. Inside, the apartment was frozen in time. Dust covered everything. Furniture, bookshelves, a desk by the window overlooking the Hudson River. But it wasn't abandoned. It was preserved, like a museum exhibit of someone's secret life. I walked through slowly, taking it in. The walls were covered with photographs, not family photos, crime scene photos, newspaper clippings, medical records with names I didn't recognize, And in the center of it all, a corkboard with a single word written in red marker, oxytrol. My blood went cold. Oxytrol was Caldwell Pharmaceutical's flagship drug, a pain medication that had made my father billions, the drug that had built our empire. But these newspaper clippings weren't celebrating it. They were exposing it. Deaths linked to Caldwell painkiller, one headline read. FDA investigation into oxytrol side effects, said another. Families sue pharmaceutical giant. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking. Carmen, you need to see this. She was there in minutes. Together, we combed through everything. The more we found, the worse it got. My father had known. He'd known oxytrol was dangerous, that it was causing heart problems, strokes, even deaths. And he'd buried the evidence, paid off researchers, silenced whistleblowers. This apartment was his confession. His guilty conscience turned into wallpaper. Maya, Carmen said softly, holding up a folder. Look at this. Inside were legal documents, settlements, dozens of them. Families paid to stay quiet about their loved ones' deaths. All signed by Richard Voss. Richard knew, I whispered. More than that, Carmen said, her voice grim. He orchestrated it. I confronted Richard 3 days later in his office at Caldwell Pharmaceuticals. The building was glass and steel, towering over Midtown Manhattan like a monument to success. My father's name was etched above the entrance. Inside, employees nodded respectfully as I passed. They had no idea what I'd discovered. Richard's office was on the top floor, corner view, abstract art on the walls. He stood when I entered, smiling that warm, familiar smile. Maya, it's so good to see you. I've been worried. You haven't been returning my calls. I didn't sit. I found Dad's apartment. The smile faltered, just for a second, but I saw it. I don't know what you're talking about. Riverside Drive, apartment 216, his secret collection of everything he was ashamed of. Richard's face went hard. Your father was a complicated man. He was a murderer. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic? My voice rose. He knew oxytrol was killing people and he kept selling it. And you helped him cover it up. Richard walked to his desk, poured himself a drink. Scotch. Expensive. Your father saved millions of lives, Maya. Oxytrol relieved suffering for countless patients. And killed hundreds. Side effects happen. That's medicine. We followed the law. You paid families to stay quiet. We settled lawsuits. That's how business works. He took a sip, watching me over the rim of his glass. Your father understood that. He made hard choices so this company could survive. So you could inherit something worth having. I felt sick. This isn't worth having. It's built on bodies. Richard set down his glass. What do you want to do, Maya? Go public? Destroy your father's legacy? Bankrupt the company? Put 10,000 employees out of work? I want the truth. The truth? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. The truth is, your father was human. He made mistakes, but he also built something extraordinary. And now it's yours. You can tear it down out of some misguided sense of justice, or you can accept that the world isn't black and white. I stared at him. This man I'd known my entire life. I'm going to the FDA, to the press, all of it. His expression turned cold. No, you're not. Watch me. Maya, your father left you 51% of the company, but he also left contingencies, legal protections. If you go public with any of this, you'll be sued for defamation, breach of fiduciary duty, and corporate sabotage. We have lawyers who will tie you up in court for decades. You'll lose everything. I don't care. You should. He leaned forward. Because it's not just about you. Your father had other secrets, personal ones, things that would hurt people you care about. Your mother, for instance. My breath caught. What about my mother? Ask yourself why she left when you were 10. Why she never fought for custody. Why she took a settlement and disappeared. You're lying. Am I? He smiled. Your father paid her $5 million to walk away and never tell you why. Do you really want to dig into that? I left Richard's office shaking with rage. He thought he could threaten me, manipulate me with secrets about my mother, make me too afraid to fight back. He was wrong. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. Everything Richard said kept echoing in my head. My mother. $5 million. A settlement to disappear. Part of me wanted to know. Wanted to dig into that secret too. Understand why she'd left. Why I'd spent my childhood thinking she just didn't love me enough to stay. But that's exactly what Richard wanted. He wanted me distracted, paralyzed by personal pain while he continued destroying lives with drugs like oxytrol. I pulled out my phone and called Carmen. He threatened you, she asked when I finished explaining. Yes, and he thinks it'll work. Will it? I looked up at the Caldwell Pharmaceuticals building through my windshield. My father's name, my inheritance, my responsibility now. No, I said. We're not backing down. We're going bigger. How much bigger? I want to hire more investigators, not just you, a whole team, forensic accountants, medical experts, journalists who've been trying to expose Caldwell for years. Carmen was quiet for a moment. Maya, that's going to be expensive, and it's going to make you a target. I don't care. If Richard wants a war, I'll give him one. Okay, she said. I know people. Give me 48 hours. 2 days later, we had our team. Forensic accountants, medical experts, journalists who'd been trying to expose Caldwell for years. We worked out of a rented office in Queens, far from Manhattan's prying eyes. The walls became covered with our own corkboard. Timelines, connections, evidence. Oxytrol went through FDA approval in the year 2002, Carmen explained, pointing to the timeline. But the clinical trials were flawed. Your father's company funded the research, and when early results showed cardiac risks, they buried those findings. How? I asked. They paid the lead researcher to omit the data from the final report. Dr. Samuel Chen. He worked at Columbia Medical Center. Got a very generous consulting contract with Caldwell right after the drug was approved. I wrote down the name. Where is he now? Dead. Car accident in 2008. Of course. Convenient. Maybe too convenient, said Marcus, one of our forensic accountants. I've been tracking unusual payments from Caldwell's accounts. There's a pattern. Every time someone threatened to expose the oxytrol problems, they either got paid off or something happened to them. Something happened? Accidents. Sudden illnesses. One whistleblower was discredited when child porn mysteriously found on his computer. Marcus shook his head. Your father and Richard ran a very tight ship. I felt the weight of it crushing me. How many people died because of oxytrol? Carmen pulled up a spreadsheet. Confirmed deaths directly linked to the drug? At least 400, but the real number is probably much higher. Many patients never connected their heart problems to the medication. 400 people. 400 families destroyed. All for profit. There's something else. Carmen said quietly. I found communications between your father and Richard from last year, encrypted emails. They were arguing about something called Project Meridian. What's that? A new drug, still in development. According to these emails, it's got the same problems as Oxytrol, maybe worse, and Richard wants to push it through FDA approval anyway. My stomach dropped. He's going to do it again, unless we stop him. My lawyer told me I had 3 options. Option 1, go public immediately, expose everything, face the lawsuits Richard promised, and probably lose the company, my inheritance, and any credibility. Option 2, work within the system. Use my position as majority shareholder to quietly shut down Project Meridian and reform the company from the inside. Slow, safe, but it meant keeping my father's crimes hidden. Option 3, sell my shares to Richard, walk away with billions, and let someone else deal with the moral complexity. I sat in my Brooklyn apartment, staring at my father's letter. Trust no one at the company, especially not Richard. But could I trust my father? A man who'd spent decades lying. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Miss Caldwell, my name is Dr. Jennifer Park. I worked with your father at Caldwell Pharmaceuticals. I was let go 3 years ago for raising concerns about Oxytrol. My pulse quickened. I'm listening. I heard through the grapevine that you've been investigating. I want to help. I have documents. Original trial data that was never submitted to the FDA, emails, recorded conversations, everything you need to prove your father and Richard knew exactly what they were doing. Why didn't you go public before? She laughed bitterly. I tried. I went to the FDA, the press, everywhere. But Caldwell has friends in high places. My career was destroyed. My reputation ruined. I gave up. But if you're willing to fight... She paused. I'm willing to fight with you. Where are you? Seattle. I can be in New York tomorrow. Do it, I said. After I hung up, I called Carmen. We're going public, all of it. Maya, the lawsuits, let them come. My father spent his last years living with guilt, hiding in that apartment, knowing what he'd done. I won't do the same. You could lose everything. I already have. We broke the story on a Tuesday. Not through traditional media. They were too easy to buy off or intimidate. Instead, we went directly to the public. A detailed website with every document, every email, every piece of evidence we'd collected. Dr. Park's testimony, the hidden apartment, the settlements, everything. Within hours, it went viral. The hashtag #LoningCaldwellKnew trended worldwide. News outlets that had initially been skeptical were forced to cover it. Families who'd lost loved ones to Oxytrol came forward, no longer afraid. The FDA announced an immediate investigation. Congress called for hearings, and Caldwell Pharmaceuticals' stock plummeted. Richard held a press conference, denying everything. He called me unstable, grief-stricken, manipulated by people who wanted to profit from the company's downfall. But it was too late. The truth was out. The lawsuits came fast. Richard was right about that. Caldwell Pharmaceuticals sued me for defamation and breach of fiduciary duty. Richard personally sued me for damaging his reputation. Their lawyers were vicious, well-funded, and relentless. But we had something they didn't. The truth. And an army of people who refused to let it be buried again. Dr. Park testified before Congress, detailing how she'd been silenced. Carmen presented the financial evidence of payoffs and cover-ups. Marcus showed the pattern of accidents and convenient deaths around whistleblowers. And I read my father's letter, on national television. every word. "I'm sorry," I said at the end, tears streaming down my face. "I'm sorry my father did this. I'm sorry I didn't know sooner. And I'm sorry to everyone who suffered because of Caldwell Pharmaceuticals. You deserved better." The trial took 8 months. Richard Voss was eventually charged with fraud, obstruction of justice, and multiple counts of involuntary manslaughter. He maintained his innocence until the end, but the evidence was overwhelming. He was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Caldwell Pharmaceuticals was forced to pay out billions in settlements to victims' families. The company itself was restructured under federal oversight. Many executives were fired. The entire board was replaced, and I kept my 51%. People asked me why. Why not sell and walk away? Why burden myself with this broken, toxic legacy because someone had to fix it? I brought in new leadership, people with integrity, medical ethicists, patient advocates. We halted Project Meridian and implemented new testing protocols that went far beyond FDA requirements. We established a victims fund for anyone harmed by oxytrol. It wasn't redemption. You can't redeem 400 deaths, but it was accountability. And maybe slowly, it was change. Carmen stayed on as head of compliance. Dr. Park became our chief medical officer. Together, we started rebuilding what my father had corrupted. It wasn't easy. Some days I wanted to burn it all down and walk away. Some nights I lay awake wondering if I was just putting a fresh coat of paint on a house built on bones. But then I'd get an email from a patient whose life was saved by one of our drugs, or a researcher thanking us for our new transparency policies, and I'd remember why I was doing this. Not for my father, not for Richard, not even for myself. For the people my father forgot to care about in his pursuit of success. 1 year after the trial ended, I returned to my father's secret apartment on Riverside Drive. The landlord had kept it preserved, unsure what to do with it. I walked through those dusty rooms one last time, looking at the evidence of his guilt plastered on every wall. And then I wrote him a letter. I don't know why. He was gone. He'd never read it. But I needed to say the words anyway. "Dad," I wrote. "I found everything. The apartment, the secrets, the truth you couldn't face while you were alive. And I did what you couldn't do. I exposed it all. I destroyed your legacy to save what was left of your soul. I'm angry at you. I'll probably be angry for the rest of my life. You had a choice every single day to do the right thing, and you chose money. You chose success. You chose silence. But I also understand something now that I didn't before. You weren't a monster. You were just human. Weak and flawed and terrified of losing what you'd built. And that fear made you do monstrous things. I won't make the same mistake. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to undo the damage you caused. Not because I think it'll erase what you did, but because it's the only way I know how to live with being your daughter. I hope, wherever you are, you've found some peace, because I'm still looking for mine." Your daughter Maya. I left the letter on his desk in the apartment. Then I locked the door behind me for the last time. Outside, New York was alive with spring. People rushing to work, chasing dreams, building their own legacies. Some of them would be good. Some would be complicated. Some would be terrible. But they'd all be human. Just like my father. Just like me. Before you go, can I ask you for a quick favor? If you enjoyed this story, please hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications. It might seem like a small thing, but it makes a huge difference for this channel. Subscriptions help YouTube show these stories to more people who need to hear them, and notifications make sure you never miss the next chapter. Your support is what keeps this channel alive. It's what allows me to spend hours crafting these stories, making sure every word hits the way it should. And honestly, knowing you're out there listening makes every late night worth it. So subscribe, hit that bell, and let's keep this community growing. More stories are coming, and I can't wait to share them with you.